welcome back to another episode of Cutter One. I am your host, Jay, just Jay, and thank you for being here. First thing I wanted to start it with was Happy Friday, everybody. We made it through another week. That's awesome. Um, just wanted to say thank you to everybody who's been like getting involved in the comments and stuff like that, and showing that us fans can have good, respectful conversations and questions and stuff like that. Loving it. That's totally awesome. Um, I like talking about this stuff. So, when I see people posting questions and stuff like that and comments and views and opinions and stuff like that, I just think it's great. Again, don't have to agree with what I'm saying. I may not necessarily see it from the same perspective as somebody else, but the fact that we can have that really cool like discussion where people can say, hey, thanks for pointing that out, or maybe try looking at it this way. I thought it was kind of cool. Anyway, I wanted to touch on a couple of things because I saw this article and it it sort of got me. It's a couple days old. It's just about a week old. The big Rings of Power season 2 questions answered. I wanted to go through some of them because I mean, some of it shows exactly what's wrong with this show in regards to like the lore and their sort of, I don't know if it's lack of knowledge or just not caring about the lore. But anyway, let's go through it. So they say the big Rings of Power season 2 questions answered. So, The Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, wrapped up its first season with seismic shifts and room for expansion. The billion-dollar show, which has already been greenlit for 5 seasons, found room for explosive moments and almost shocking revelations, and even a reworked map of Middle Earth. But it was still table setting. The Lord of the Rings, we know, is still far down the timeline. With the first season finale released to the world, here are the major questions about what exactly happens next in season 2 and beyond. And thanks to the Rings of Power writer Jennifer Hutchison, we already know a little about where Sauron, Galadriel, and the Stranger are headed. So let's take this one first. Is the Stranger actually Gandalf? Since the Stranger, Daniel Wayman, showed up his identity. Showed up his identity has been a mystery. Spurred on by the cast and crew of The Rings of Power making reference to him as a familiar character to fans. After 8 episodes, the answer seems to be maybe. Though the finale gives some compelling evidence, the White Robes decide he's not Sauron and instead call him Istar, which Tolkien fans will recognize as a singular form of Istari, the elven word for the wizards of Middle Earth. He turns them into swarms of moths, a move certainly associated with the Gandalf of the Peter Jackson movies. He picks up a staff to do this magic, or whatever we're calling it, which seems to evoke a certain type of gray and later white wizard. And now that he can speak in full sentences, he's certainly sounding more like Gandalf, even cribbing from a lot of stuff Gandalf said in the Jackson movies. And what they're referring to is if you watch the show, first, you have my sympathies. But if you watch the show, towards the end, he's sort of tells Nori that we're to follow your nose, which is a throwback to Peter Jackson when they're entering Moria. I believe he's talking with Pippin, and Gandalf tells Pippin, when in doubt, to follow your nose, or something. I'm paraphrasing, but that's sort of the line. The important part of the line is to follow your nose, which is what the Stranger says to Nori at the end of the season finale. Um, but we know where they're going. They're going to Rune, or Rune, um, which I happen to have a map here. So this is a map of Middle Earth. As you can see, Rune is. Let's see. I'm just trying to. This is Rune right here. Rune, Rune, and it's Rune. That's where they're going. Now notice what direction that's in. That direction is to the east of Middle Earth. It's to the east. Now, if you remember when I was talking about Gandalf and how Gandalf is his name to the elves, or I should say to the men of uh, of the West. To the elves, he's known as Mithrandir or Mithrandir. Um, but his name is Olorin. If you remember when I said that, he didn't have a name for when he was in the East, and he specifically it's stated that he does not go to the East. So Gandalf does not travel to the East. As far as we know in the lore, the only wizards that go to the East and the far south, where Haradrim, would be down here, um, south of Mordor. The only wizards that go there are the blue wizards. Gandalf does not go to Rune. So unless they are planning on seriously violating the lore and having Gandalf go to Rune, it makes no sense that they would have him using Gandalf lines in relation to going someplace that Gandalf, according to the lore, doesn't go. But then again, we know how they've been playing fast and loose with the lore. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do with that. Um so yeah, so I don't I I hope they don't make him Gandalf. If they make this character Gandalf, they totally screw the pooch when it comes to lore. But I hope they don't. So where are the stranger and Nori headed? Like we said, Rune. We know they're going to Rune. Uh, After confronting the White Robes, the stranger deciding that he is absolutely not Sauron, he decides it's time to go east to Rune to discover more about himself. Nori, ever eager to get off the Harfoot path, decides to go with him while Poppy stays behind. In Rune, they'll be able to see the constellation the stranger has been chasing all season, which is called the Hermit's Hat, and hopefully get answers the stranger's been seeking all season about his identity, powers, and what he should actually do in this world. Again, if they make him Gandalf, screw in the pooch on the lore. Big time. Again, it's specifically stated Gandalf does not travel to the east. So I'll just leave it at that. What happens in Numenor now that the king is dead? Without getting into spoilers about what happens to the Numenorians canonically, suffice it to say the island nation is in a tricky place. Queen Miriel and Elendil have returned home to enlist the country in a fight against the orcs residing in the newly created Mordor. Not that anyone can call it that. To find that the king has died. Pharazôn is continuing to rally the residents on a more conservative future of Numenor and fear of outsiders elves. Uh well, I don't know what they're gonna do in the show, obviously. I know what happens canonically in the lore. Um and you have to understand what motivates the Numenorians. They're not this whole fear of outsiders slash elves and they're here to take your jobs. Um that's literally bullshit. I don't know where they get that from. Um to follow the lore, the Numenorians' problem with the elves is they're jealous of the elves. They feel that it's not fair that the elves get what could be considered immortality and that men, humans, don't. And even with the Numenorians' extended lifespans, because they do have extended lifespans. And there's actually in the extended cut of I believe it's either the Two Towers or Return of the King. It's Return of the King. There's actually a part where Eowyn is talking with Aragorn and realizes he's Dunedain. Maybe the Two Towers. Realizes he's one of the Dunedain, which are those gifted with a extra long life. And that's directly descended from Numenorians. So they do have a longer life. Off the top of my head, I think it's something like 200 years. Like they can reach like 200 years old or something like that. I don't remember the number exactly, but it's extended like they more than a normal human would have. But they're not happy with that, and Sauron sort of plays that up and leads them down this path, which ultimately culminates in them bringing about the fall of Numenor with what they do. But it's motivated not from a fear of outsiders or elves or a hatred of elves. It's jealousy. It's just they want immortality, and that's what motivates it. So, this whole thing about them being this sort of quasi isolationist thing, I don't understand, because at this point in the lore, at this point, the Numenorians already have established, you know, colonies, cities, um, on the coast of Middle Earth, on the west coast of Middle Earth. They've already got cities there, that are Numenorian. So, this whole isolationist thing is strictly for the show. What will Aaron do with the Palantir? Before Numenor's king dies, he lets Aaron into the secret passage with the Palantir. While we don't see what happens after, whether she makes it to the room or touches the crystal ball, but considering what Muriel has seen with the Palantir, it seems like whatever happens to Aaron in that room could have consequences for Numenor. And when we spoke to the Rings of Power writer Jennifer Hutchinson, she agreed completely. While Aaron's father, Elendil, is aligned with those faithful to the elves, Hutchinson said via Zoom, she's the member of the family who represents the more isolationist Numenorian point of view. She's been left behind, said Hutchinson, and introducing her into that very intimate space with the king allowed for us to hint at how there might be some conflict, which we've been building so much in Numenor, and to make it more intimate with characters that are directly part of the story. Again, Numenor was never isolationist. They would periodically go to Middle Earth. They established colonies along the coast there. Um, they they actually, according to the lore, at one point they actually send a fleet and they go over and they kick Sauron's ass. Actually, they go to kick Sauron's ass, and when they get to him in Mordor, he literally completely surrenders to them. It's all part of a bigger plan, but Sauron literally surrenders to them, and they bring him back to Numenor. And that's slowly how things turn out, where he sort of plays into their jealousy of the elves being given the gift of immortality, which goes way deeper. I mean, I can make a whole hour episode on that. So again, this whole thing that they seem to be building with this whole isolationist, Numenorian stuff, that's strictly for the show stuff, and I hope they don't go down that road, but apparently it looks like they might. Is Isildur dead? No, we know. We know that Isildur is not dead. I mean, all you got to know, watch is the first 3 minutes of the Lord of the Rings films, and you know Isildur is not dead. So I'm not even gonna get into that one. What does Galadriel do with the knowledge that Halbrand is Sauron? Halbrand got his final bit of manipulation in the 8th episode of the Rings of Power as he convinced Celebrimbor to make some rings, maybe even of power. And it was right about this time that Galadriel finally realized what many have theorized and known for weeks. Halbrand is Sauron. Though she rejects him and his offer of power, Galadriel does not reveal to anyone what she knows, essentially following the guidance laid out by the Finrod in her vision, slash the Finrod that Sauron put in her vision, to do nothing to stop Sauron's plan. So with Halbrand, Sauron's ring plan moving forward with the crucial maybe addition of a third ring, and Galadriel looking like a goober at having palled around with her sworn enemy for all this time, it's not a great look, though it certainly sets up some tension for season 2, especially since what does Elrond do now that he knows Sauron is Halbrand? Um, Nothing. Nothing. Neither of them do anything. Though Galadriel doesn't share her news, Elrond is suspicious and wanders out to find the genealogy scroll that leads him to figure out that Halbrand is Sauron. Unfortunately, he finds this news too late, arriving back at the workshop just as the elven rings, the Rings of Power, are being completed. Elrond has spent much of this season running around trying to more directly help Celebrimbor and Gil-galad figure out how to save the elves, harness the power of Mithril, and generally do good in the world. The question that remains is, will Elrond keep his promise to trust Galadriel and not reveal what he knows? Hutchison said that the challenge of Galadriel and Elrond's friendship was framing a strong connection even when the characters shared so little screen time. When they come back together in this episode, it is such a big moment for them. He sent her away and now she's back. He's between his guilt. I should have trusted you, and he's also just so happy to see her. It's been a hard time. Now your friend's back. We tried to really invest that in that scene with the two of them talking together about what's happened. Luckily, those actors are so wonderful and incredible that I feel like they can really play those subtleties. That dilemma was among the important pillars of the episode. I think it's pretty clear at the end that there's a bit of conflict in that moment, Hutchinson said. She's made a big ask of him. We really did want to have that. This is the true test. You said you'll trust me. We really wanted to make sure that came through. What happens to Durin the Fourth and his dwarven succession? Something we all know is that dwarves rule, and there should be more of them in the world. Durin's plot to, maybe, overthrow his dad, King Durin the Third, so he could keep mining for Mithril. Sure, there's a Balrog in the mix there too, but I care more about watching dwarves rip and generally bring the party. Where we know what happens. We know what happens. They've just sort of tweaked why. The dwarves dig too deep and too greedily. Greedily being the key word there. The show sort of changes it. The dwarves don't go digging looking for mithril to help the elves because it recharges the elves' batteries. That's completely made up for the show. The dwarves just they dig too deeply and too greedily, and they come across the Balrog. The Balrog isn't there just chilling out like according to the show. The Balrog has actually been hiding there, hibernating there, since the end of the War of Wrath at the end of the first era. A lot of the Balrogs, a lot of Morgoth's top tier lieutenants and generals sort of scattered and tried to hide. Hence Sauron, and hence Doran's Bane, the Balrog. Another problem with this is there should only be one Doran. Doran is a name that it's a significant name for the dwarves. If you are named Doran, it is because they believe you are the reincarnation of Durin, I want to say undying, but I think it's actually Durin the undead, who was one of the first dwarves. He was the first dwarf. And it's believed that he will be born, he grows, he becomes a leader, lives out his life. When he passes away, he's reincarnated. His spirit comes back again. And if you're named Durin by the dwarves, you are considered the reincarnation of Durin the Undying. So there's only ever one Durin. So this whole Durin the Third, Durin the Fourth, no, no. Again, that's the show. They play fast and loose with a lot of this lore. That's why it drives me crazy. But anyway, I just wanted to touch base on that. I know it's an article that's a little bit older, but I wanted to touch base because it goes into some of the lore, and I like talking about the lore. I think it's awesome. I can't stand the changes that they made to it. But anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions, if there's any specific part of the lore you guys would want me to talk about or to go over. I think I may start doing that at some point, is maybe doing episodes where I just pick a part of the lore and just go like deep dive into it. Let me know if that's something you guys would be interested in seeing. Other than that, that's all I wanted to touch on with this. I just wanted to answer some of these questions, the lore answers versus what the show is going to do. And yeah, that's kind of it right now. So if you like what I did here, hit the like button. hit the bell for notifications, and please give a subscribe because it helps out the channel. And again, leave a comment. I love like the comments and the questions and the discussions and stuff like that. I think that's really awesome. So you guys are great. Thanks for checking it out, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.